Greetings. Welcome to this presentation of Things They Didn't Teach You in Church, brought to you by Christ Church of the Holy Word. Visit us, we'll put it on the screen for you, christchurchoftheholyword.com. It's the home of free 24/7 Bible study for the serious Bible student. It's a work in progress, folks. We welcome all of your input, your suggestions, and questions. Tonight, we are going to continue our series, The Four Hidden Dynasties of the Bible, and are going to examine the third hidden dynasty, the economy. When I began writing my quote-unquote next book, after we finished up the final edit and everything on angels or aliens, and this began back in 2019, I decided on the subject of the hidden dynasties of the Bible because they are going to be controlling everything that is going on as we approach Christ's return. And as a Christian, we've been told to stay alert and be watchmen. I knew at that time, this was back in 2019, that things were escalating on the world stage at a tremendous rate. But the speed at which things keep changing and are changing today are just amazing, really. 2 years ago, it's back in 2019, gas was under $2 a gallon. The country was at full employment. ISIS had been decimated. There was peace in the Middle East. Illegals coming across our border had slowed to a dribble. The middle class's average income was at the highest level ever, and inflation was nearly non-existent at all. Now, in June of 2021, gas prices have doubled in some places. Unemployment in April of 2021 was over 6%. ISIS is back and on the rise. The Middle East is in flames. Food costs, along with gasoline costs, is skyrocketing. Illegals are again pouring into our country over our southern border, and inflation is eating away at all the middle class's income gains from the last few years. What happened? Well, you know what happened. We have returned to President Obama's normal, quote-unquote normal, of 2012. Now, in this series, as we have moved through the four hidden dynasties, each one seemed a little more powerful than the last to me. Education and its right arm, the world scientific community, have indoctrinated our citizens in the truths of Babylon. I mean, it is literally educating our children in the confusion of the end times, friends. The hidden dynasty of politics makes the laws and exercises its control over the people. But the third hidden dynasty controls the world's purse strings. And if you control the world's money, most people will do whatever you say. Now let me be clear. My greatest fear today, 2021, is not COVID-19 or the riots that are actually still going on in some of our major cities, or the continual threats being made to our republic from foreign entities such as China, Russia, or the DNC. And it certainly isn't, as President Biden told the American public last month, white supremacy or climate change. I mean, give me a break. My greatest fear today is another collapse of the U.S. economy, even worse than we saw in 2008. A lot worse, friends. Now, I'm not saying that the coming collapse won't be related to the activities of China or Russia or the Democrat National Committee, but the economic impact of this next collapse that's coming and the devastating results of that collapse are what really worry me the most. It's been clear to me for several years that in order for a one-world political system, which you know by now is the beast of Revelation, for that one-world political system to become a reality, the entire world must be in somewhat equal economically. Think about that. Third world countries, as well as countries such as the United States, Canada, and Great Britain, must become somewhat equal economically. Otherwise, why would America join something like that? It's a reasonable question. There needs to be a one-world currency, and there has to be agreements made uniting the world's military and police forces in some fashion. The fact is, for these things to happen, the entire world economy will have to be in the dumpster. The whole world will have to be broke, struggling, and desperate. It's not a pretty picture. Imagine the entire world in crisis, a worldwide depression in progress, world powers at each other's throats, the people of the world in fear for their own survival, and the only hope for mankind will be presented to the people as this one world system that's going to fix everything and take care of everybody's problems. Something in the future is going to happen to trigger this calamity. Think about it. In order for free nations of the world to join with the communist and Islamic countries worldwide in a one-world political system, the situation will have to be disastrous, folks. The unavoidable truth is that that's exactly what the Bible says is going to happen. So, if you believe in the Word of God, friends, we need to get ready. We're going to begin our study tonight of this third hidden dynasty of the economy, which Satan will control when he returns. We're going to pick it up in chapter 8 of the book of Daniel. And we're going to start with verse 23. We'll put it on the screen as always. And I should right here probably mention, should have done it before, but if you want to get a piece of paper and a pencil, we're going to put a lot of stuff on the screen for you. If you write down little notes, then you can go and check it out after the lecture. And check us out. I always encourage you. Check me out. Make sure what I'm saying is true. Do that to everyone you listen to, dear one. If people are talking, if you're going to believe it, make sure they're telling you the truth. So, chapter 8, book of Daniel, we're going to pick it up in verse 23. And verse 23 reads, "And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up." Is there any doubt in your mind at this point in time, if you're this far into this series, who we're talking about here? I hope not. There shouldn't be. That line there, and I quote, "And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to full," their kingdom that they're talking about is the evil kingdom of the world. When the end of the world, this earth age is right at hand. I also hope you recognize who it is that we're talking about here, where it says king of fierce countenance of the end times. It's Satan himself, friends. Believe me, you can take this to the bank, since we're talking about economics. he wouldn't let anybody else do it. His pride wouldn't allow that to happen. Believe me. Satan is returning to this world of flesh as Antichrist. You need to get a solid grip on that fact. Let's continue in the 8th chapter of the book of Daniel with verse 24. And verse 24 reads, "And his power," speaking of this king, Antichrist, "and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people." This word practice, I'll put it on the screen for you, in the Strong's Hebrew Dictionary is number 6213, usher. And it's a prime root, which simply means that a lot of other words in the Hebrew language come from that particular word. And the meaning, we'll put this on the screen for you, is to do or to make in the broadest sense and the widest application. In other words, to accomplish, to advance, to appoint, to bestow, to bring forth, to bruise, and so on. So in other words, what it's saying is Satan is going to be calling the shots. He's putting things in motion and he's running the show. Satan is coming peacefully and prosperously, preaching his new message. And notice where it says, but not by his own power. We've talked about this before in this series. Friends, God is allowing it. Nothing happens without God allowing it. As hard as that is to explain, sometimes it's part of his plan. It's his will. So let's continue in verse 25. Verse 25 reads, "And through his policy," still talking of Antichrist here, "also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart," there's that pride again, "and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand." Now this word craft in the Strong's Hebrew Dictionary, we'll put it on the screen for you. It's number 4820, mirma, and it means fraud or craft, dishonesty, cheating, deceit, deceitful, deceitfully, false, feign, guile, treachery, and so on. And in Daniel chapter 11, verse 21, we'll put this on the screen for you too. It states, verse 21 of the 11th chapter of Daniel reads, "And in his estate shall stand up a vile person," the same guy we're talking about, "to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries." He's coming, folks. He's coming peacefully. Peace, peace, peace is going to be the message. But there will be no peace. In Luke, in the great book of Luke, chapter 12, verse 51, write that down, we'll put it on the screen for you. Book of Luke, chapter 12, verse 51, Christ tells us that he did not come to give peace on earth, but rather division. And the division that Christ is going to bring is going to be between his children and Satan's children, between good, between evil, between those that will live with him for an eternity and those that are going to go into the lake of fire with Satan. And don't pass over that little that last part in verse 21, Satan will obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Like I said, pride is one of Satan's main flaws. It was his downfall in the first and heaven age. He knows all about flattery and pride. He thinks he's better than God. And he's going to be telling the people of the world when he shows up how great they are too. He's not just going to flatter you, friend. Satan wants to take care of you, give you everything you need. That's what he's going to promise you. Satan is going to control the hidden dynasty of the economy, and the financial powers of the world, of this world, are going to support him totally and help him in his takeover. He's going to control everything and will claim he will give everyone everything they need. All you have to do, worship him, beloved. Now, don't expect things to be prosperous and fair, however, during the time leading up to his arrival. That's like right now, going forward, who knows how long, but into the future. And don't expect to get anything from him when he does arrive if you're not willing to accept the mark of the beast. And that means getting down and worshiping him. In the book of Amos, chapter 8, we get a glimpse of what the world will really look like just before Satan arrives. Let's go there. We're going to pick it up in verse 8 and put it on the screen for you. Chapter 8 of the book of Amos, and verse 4 reads, "Hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy, even to make the poor of the land fail." You know who this is addressed to? The controllers of the hidden dynasty of the economy. These are the people, beloved, that control the wealth and the power of the world through that wealth. The people in control of the world today, they don't give a hoot about the poor or the needy of this world. If they did, they could have solved poverty in this country, in the United States, decades ago. I mean, really, by creating educational work programs and going into poverty-stricken areas and actually fixing things instead of this comedy of errors that they've followed for decades and decades. Now, here's a hint for all you sharp watchers out there. And I'm not going to go into it tonight, but in this next verse that we're going to go to, verse 5, we have a clue of what the fourth hidden dynasty will be doing at this time that we're talking about, right before Satan shows up and takes control. So let's pick it up, verse 5, and verse 5 reads, saying, who's speaking here? Same people. The rich, powerful, the ones that control what's going on in the world just before Antichrist shows up. Verse 5 again, saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn, and the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. At this time, right before Antichrist shows up to save the day, we will have to get permission from the powers that be to open our businesses. Huh. That sounds a lot like what's been going on the past year and a half or so, huh? But what's this falsifying the balances by deceit? You know, we talked in a previous lecture about how the ephah and the shekels value will be reversed, flipped. In other words, everything value-wise, monetarily, is going to be turned upside down on its head. Well, this word balance, we'll put it on the screen for you. Balances in the Hebrew has only one meaning. It means scales. So in other words, the means by which the fairness, or the instruments that are supposed to protect the fairness in finances and in the economy and how it's administrated, are going to be turned upside down also. That also sounds pretty familiar to me. I mean, doesn't it sound kind of like what we're looking at today? Let me ask you a serious question, folks. What percentage of interest are you paying on your credit cards today? And then what percent of interest is the bank paying you for using your money that you have in your savings account? It's kind of upside down. Although it's often misquoted, we hear it said quite a bit. And the way that they quote it, they say, is money is the root of all evil. Well, it actually comes from a verse in 1 Timothy, from the 6th chapter of 1 Timothy, and it's in verse 10. We're going to put it on the screen for you. Verse 10 of 1 Timothy chapter 6 reads, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." It's not money, friends. It's the love of money. Let me begin that again. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which, while some coveted after, they have erred from faith. It's driven them away from their faith, and it's pierced them through with many sorrows. When Christ returns, there's going to be a lot of sorrow going on about a lot of things, and the love of money is going to be one of the main ones. Money is going to be a driving force in the last days, even more than it is today. As governments collapse, including, I'm afraid, perhaps the United States, the time is going to be tough for everyone. How secure are people's pensions? What about unemployment, welfare, other benefits that are provided by not just our governments, but governments all over the world? That's always the problem with socialism, which is exactly what the one world political system is. It's socialistic government. The problem with socialism is when things get bad, there's no money for anyone except those people in power. And they have everything. When Satan shows up, things are going to be rough. And the world is going to be looking for help from wherever and whoever it can get it from. As I've said before in this series, there is nothing to worry about. God is going to protect his children. In fact, in a minute we'll touch on some of the scripture where God tells Satan and his fallen angels that they cannot touch anyone with the seal of God in their forehead. That doesn't, however, mean that we shouldn't make some preparations. Jesus told us in Matthew 24 and in Mark 13 that the time Satan would be allowed to tempt God's children on this earth as Antichrist has been shortened. And then in Revelation chapter 9 verse 5, we are told that the time has been shortened to a 5-month period. Now this verse is talking about those supernatural beings that are returning with Antichrist that we talked about in the last episode, the 10 kings that are going to rule with Antichrist for 1 hour, the hour of temptation. Let's go and pick this up in the verse just before that, in verse 4 of Revelation chapter 9. Get a little context to it. Verse 4, and it reads, "And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads." So as I told you earlier, it is God's command to Satan and his fallen angels not to mess with God's children. Let's continue, verse 5. And verse 5 reads, "And to them," same supernatural beings, this is who it's speaking to, "and to them it was given that they should not kill them being the non-believers even, but that they should be tormented 5 months. There's your time, folks. "And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man." They won't be tormenting us, friends. They are told that they can torment only those without the seal of God in their foreheads. They will be tormenting the non-believers by filling them with their lies, which will poison them just like a strike from a scorpion. Have you ever been stung by a scorpion? I have been, a couple of times actually. And let me tell you a little bit about it. This might give you a little idea of this, how this is going to work with these supernatural beings. When you get struck by a scorpion, you can feel the poison spreading through your body. I got hit one time on my right big toe. I was walking around barefoot, crazy, I know. Wrong time of the year. And for almost a whole day, I could feel the numbness moving up my right side and then like through my head. Seriously, I could feel it through my head. And then down my left side as the poison spread. I believe it has to do with your heart and the way that your heart pumps blood. But anyway, these evil creatures' lies, it's going to spread just like that through those that they torment, just like the poison of a scorpion, and until it consumes them. Now, friends, this is serious. 5 months is not a long time, and we Christians need to be prepared. Friends, there are many names by which we call the people that want to bring this one world system into existence and who control the 4 hidden dynasties at this time. It's the same, folks. Probably the one name that we hear the most today thrown around that applies to these people is globalists. These powerful controllers of the hidden dynasty of the economy and those of the hidden dynasty of education will team up with those of the hidden dynasty of politics to control the entire world at that time, friends. You've probably heard the old saying, follow the money. That has never been truer than right now with the confusion of the end times. The rich will control the poor and will bring ruin upon the people. Then, just as it says in the book of Daniel, Antichrist arrives peacefully and prosperously, offering to save mankind from this terrible situation that it finds itself in. He's going to be embraced by and will receive the backing of all of the hidden dynasties. And then Satan, pretending to be Savior, returned to us under whatever circumstance or story he comes back with. He will be embraced by the people of the world as Lord and Savior. Satan will also be embraced by the globalists and the ultra-wealthy of the world. And you know what's crazy, friends? They are the same people, the ones that embrace him. They're the same people that brought poverty and pain to the people of the world in the first place. Now, I don't believe most people have any idea where the United States really is in the world economically, or where America's poorest people rank in the world's economy either. Sometimes it's difficult to find the truth in some of the politicized studies out there that are being done today. But to put things in perspective, and I'll put this on the screen for you, here are a couple of relevant facts. First, the poorest 20% of Americans are richer on an average than most European nations. Second, a typical American still earns an income that's 10 times the income received by a typical person of the world. 10 times, folks. Third, the poorest Americans in the lowest 5% income range, the poorest in this country, still enjoy a greater level of wealth than the richest 5% in the nation of India. I spent most of President Obama's second term in Honduras and Nicaragua, and I received a first-hand view of life in third world countries. I traveled all over those two countries and several other countries down through Central America as I traveled whenever I could. And I want to share some of the observations from that experience with you, because the level of a third world country is what I believe we must sink to if we're ever going to join that one world political system. The family unit in Central America, as is in most third world countries, the family unit is the basis of life, and families live together in houses that have been passed down from generation to generation for many years. Maybe only one or two people in a family work, and they may support 10, 12, 15 people that all live together in that house, a lot of them children. The wages that those people live on is truly remarkable. The woman who ran the business office at the Large Language Institute, where I was assistant director in Managua, Nicaragua, she worked 6 days a week for a total of 48 hours a week, and she supervised 3 other people in our business office. She lived about an hour away from work in a family home and supported at least 7 or 8 people that lived in that house with her. She had to take an hour bus ride to and from her home every day that she worked. There was no family car. I really don't believe she ever drove a car. She was paid a salary of $350 a month. And she was the highest paid office worker in the building, and was considered by other Nicaraguans as having a really good job. Now, you're probably wondering, how in the world could anyone support 7 or 8 people on $350 a month? That's less than $1.50 a day per person. They can do it because of the way they live. It's the third world. Their diets consist of primarily beans and rice. Eating out or fast foods, not on that budget. The house they live in is very old. In Managua, most of them at least 70 years old. That's how long it's been since the big earthquake that wiped out a big segment of Managua, and they rebuilt. They've been there since then. The house probably has dirt floors, definitely no air conditioning. No way. As for transportation, if they're really lucky, they might have a family bike. If they're really, really lucky, they might have an old beat-up 150 motorcycle or something. Like I said, it's very cheap to ride the bus. Most people do that. Outside income is something that everyone tries to develop in a third world country. From little side jobs to panhandling. Everyone is looking for an extra 20 or 30 cents a day. Churches in third world countries do a lot to help the poor population. They help not only with food and supplies, but they help with medical aid and spiritual aid, of course. Policing is another thing that's very different in third world countries and is way unique when you compare it to America. The police also make very little money, and they're also always looking for additional income. I used to always carry the equivalent of a $10 bill in my shirt pocket, which would solve any problem I ever had. Mine usually traffic things, but I'm talking about any problem. Politics in the third world countries are just as corrupt as it is in this country, and money drives everything. There's an emerging middle class in Nicaragua, but folks, it's very different from the middle class of this country. To give you an idea, my highest paid instructor of English at the Language Institute in Managua earned $950 a month, and he had a master's degree in English. He also worked 6 days a week, but he was definitely part of this emerging middle class, and he felt pretty good about it. He drove a fairly new car, and much like this country, had a big old car payment along with the insurance. He lived in a fairly new apartment that probably cost him around $300, $350 a month. And he probably ate at McDonald's every now and then. Like I said, the reason I'm sharing this with you is I want you to have a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about when I say that this country must be brought down to a third world status in order for America to ever enter into the one world political system. You know, access to shopping malls, cable TV, movie theaters, the ability to travel a little bit, take some classes, higher education, ownership of automobiles, stuff like that. It's all reserved for the middle class or the richer. Believe me, friends, it's definitely not for that woman that was running our business office in Managua making $350 a month, or any of the 7 or 8 family members that she was supporting. Folks, this is the direction that we're moving in. Maybe on a little different scale, I'm not sure. But right now, the movement in the left of this country is to promote paying people not to work. They're pushing a guaranteed monthly income and a free cell phone. That's what they want to give you. I mean, it probably won't be a smartphone, but you'll be able to call unemployment on it. Santaism is in full swing today, folks, even though the country is broke and we can't even pay a lot of our current obligations like pension plans, Social Security. And now we have these huge unemployment payments and stimulus checks being issued and student loans being forgiven. Now there's more talk about more of these giveaways from the liberals today. They'll just print more money to cover it. That's what they're going to do. And all of this is adding to our national debt, which is better known as the country's deficit. And our country's deficit, friends, is growing as we speak at an unimaginable rate. Now, there's different opinions on how much the national debt actually is, depending on who you listen to, how they figure their numbers and all that stuff. It's always that way with statistics. What I've decided to do tonight is I'm going to use the highest estimates for a couple of reasons, but mostly because they seem most likely to be the most accurate of all the ones that I found. So we'll put this on the screen for you. This is pretty amazing. When George Bush left office, the United States deficit had increased to almost $12 trillion. Then when Barack Obama left office 8 years later, the deficit had increased to a total of over $20 trillion. An increase of over a little over $8 trillion in 8 years. $1 trillion a year. And this out-of-control increase continued with Donald Trump. The increase to the estimated deficit when Donald Trump left office was over $27 trillion. Now, one thing you have to remember about this is that increase would include all of the unemployment payments, the stimulus checks, the other related expense that we incurred from the China virus, like you remember the medical hospital ships we sent to major cities and portable hospitals that the government set up all over in big cities and Central Park in New York and so on and so forth. Plus all the money that got spent on the vaccine research, and goes on and on. But still, $7 trillion in 4 years. In the first 6 months of Joe Biden's tenure in office, it's estimated that our deficit has grown $3 trillion. 6 months. We had the first stimulus package that bailed out all the blue states, and then more stimulus checks, and now they're even talking about more money now for multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure package. To help you understand how serious this is, folks, I want to give you a mental picture of just how much money we're talking about in relationship to something that you use every day. Picture it according to time. Picture it in seconds and hours and years. 1 trillion seconds is equal to 31,688 years. Now, if you've got a little calculator, it's real easy. You calculate that out. That means 30 trillion seconds, which is we're in debt, $30 trillion. 30 trillion seconds is equal to 950,640 years. Are you beginning to see why this is really a big problem? Our government has decided that there's no consequences to printing more and more money. The problem is that's just not true, folks. We have seen it happen in the past over and over and over again. It's not a pretty picture. The more money you print, and this is where all this deficit is coming from, they're just printing money. They're giving it away in one form or another. Unemployment, Social Security, stimulus payments, on and on and on and on. The consequence is inflation. And then, at some point, collapse to one degree or another. There are many examples that you can look to. It's happened for centuries. Most recently, just look to Venezuela and Spain. The currency in Venezuela today, the bolivar, is worthless. It has no value whatsoever. They're now using the Colombian peso instead. There's an artist in Venezuela that's using the bolivar, the national currency, as the material that he uses to make his piñatas out of. So what happens when a currency collapses? I mean, other than people making piñatas out of it. But what actually happens when a currency collapses? And the answer is a little complicated depending on what country that you're talking about, where the collapse took place. In Spain, for example, if you woke up one morning, you probably found that the $10,000 that had been in your bank savings account the night before when you went to bed was now only like $5,000 or maybe even less. In Venezuela, when you woke up in the morning, there wasn't anything there. It was all gone. So who wins and who loses in these situations where the economy and the currency collapse? Well, first of all, know one thing above all else. The hidden dynasty of politics never loses. Great example, again, is Venezuela. The current president, Nicolas Maduro, was the vice president under the previous president, Hugo Chavez, the guy that brought on the collapse in the first place. The hidden dynasty of the economy isn't going to lose either, folks. Believe me. The game's rigged. So let's look at hard numbers, some facts, okay? Who lost and who won when the entire world, for the most part, was closed down because of the China plague? Well, the big loser in this country was small business owners and many of their employees, depending on what states they lived in. Restrictions, regulations aimed at small business in this country closed and put out of business, perhaps forever, as many as 50% of the small businesses that were in existence at the beginning of the China virus. While these small businesses were driven out of existence, big box stores like Walmart saw their sales go through the roof. And Amazon cleaned up, folks. The Brookings Institute reported that in December 2020, that Jeff Bezos, you know who he is, Amazon, and the Walmart heirs made over $116 billion in that 1 year period of time during the pandemic. In addition, other winners in the pandemic profit wars were big companies like Best Buy, Target, Home Depot, Costco, Lowe's, all the major grocery store chains, all the drugstore chains, CVS, Walgreens. Some hospitals also made out. They were big winners in the hunt for profit. because the government was paying as much as $16,000 per case bonus for patients that they treated who died, and the cause of death was listed as COVID-19. That's unbelievable. The drug companies, Pfizer, Moderna, and other companies related in the pharmaceutical field. And guess who else? All the technology companies, from Apple to eBay, the phone carriers, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, freight companies and delivery companies did well during the pandemic. They're who kept us going, really. Mining companies saw an increase in profit as their worried investors moved precious metals out of the stock market. Some government officials operating on inside information also cashed in on the pandemic by selling stocks after they attended classified briefings on the coming of COVID-19 pandemic at the very early stages. There's 4 in particular. You can Google it. You can find out what their names were. Feinstein from California was one of them. But there is no doubt who the number one winner in the pandemic profit war was. Without a doubt, it was China. In an article in Primus, which the article was adapted from a speech that Mark Stein delivered in April of 2021, the following statistics were cited. We're going to put them up on the screen for you. It's really amazing stuff. America's economy shrank in that 1 year period of time, 2020, 3.5%. Germany's and Japan's economies shrank almost 5%. France's, Italy's, and India's economy shrank over 8%. And the United Kingdom's economy shrank 10%. Guess what? China's economy grew 2.3% in 2020. Now, I can hear some of the dissenters out there going, oh, that's a small number. Come on. China, some argue, is the largest economy in the world right now, bigger than the United States. I don't know, but it's got to be close. That's a lot of money, folks. 2.3% of their entire economy grew. But even more than that, for you disbelievers, in the first quarter of 2021, in other words, January, February, and March of 2021, China's economy set a new world record for growth. It grew in 3 months 18.3%. Now, at first, it was just our manufacturing that we sent over to China, but now it's our electronics, from making laptops and cell phones to making the batteries that go in them and making microchips that run everything else that we use. Now, with COVID, they're making the personal protective equipment that everybody's buying up, and they're making our medicines too. Stein, in this speech, asserts that China is now the number one global power militarily, economically, and is the major influencer in the world today on everything from economics to health to global politics. Now, there's a funny catch to all this, because the globalists believe that they can partner with China and that China will play ball with them. History proves otherwise. I believe personally that China must be laughing in amazement as America just continues to print money with abandon, which ultimately ends up in their hands, and then we continue to allow China to do whatever, whenever, wherever it wants. It's incredible. Let's talk currency for a minute. Who would win if the dollar collapsed and was no longer the main international reserve currency? The first winner would probably be, guess who? China, because more than likely their currency, the yen, would replace the dollar and become the international reserve currency. But folks, I believe that there's something even more disturbing and sinister going on. It's in the works. We're seeing a move to electronic money that really kind of scares me, because, as I've said before, we have to move to a world currency for the one world system to actually become a reality. We've been conditioned now for many years to accept electronic money in our lives. Some of you may not even touch real money very much anymore. I really don't, except for a couple of instances. Our paychecks, along with our retirement checks, Social Security checks, they're all often deposited directly into our bank accounts now, and then we pay by credit card or by checks or by electronic transfers of some kind. We hardly ever see actual money anymore. It won't be hard to take it away from us when the time comes, folks. I mean, they're laying the groundwork. Talk about an easy path to a one-world currency. We need to be prepared. We need to be able to survive at least a 5-month period of time. Remember what happened in Venezuela and Spain. I'm afraid that we're headed in the same direction, folks. Don't be caught off guard. The globalists who control this world, believe me, they have their bases covered. You can bet on that. One of the things we have seen in this war to take over the world economy by the globalists is the narrative that Americans can and should live a good life with a good income without ever working again. I'm sure you've heard on the news about companies not being able to find new employees willing to go back to work. I believe part of the globalist plan to take over it involves unemployment payments. Right now, in 19 states in this country, where husband and wife teams are drawing unemployment, they can draw in excess of $100,000 per year in unemployment benefits. Now, Andrew Yang, you probably remember him, he ran for president in 2020 on a platform which argued for universal income. He called it Freedom Cash, but it basically argued that all Americans should receive a yearly stipend, which he said would provide a decent living for Americans rather than them having to have a job and go to work every day to earn a living. Now, the problem is, I remember Yang was talking about $10,000 a year. That doesn't sound like much. I mean, it would for some families, but not for a lot of people above the poverty level. Anyway, what we are seeing in America and within its workers, American workers, we see these people that are deciding not to go back to work because they're making more money on unemployment than they can make with a job. I know people here in the little small town that I live that, I mean, that's a real thing, folks. Because of the China virus, over 80% of all jobs were put on hold in this country, and people were told to stay home and they'd receive a check. And now they've gotten used to it. And then on top of that, millions of people with what I call information type jobs also found out that they could work remotely from home and never really had to go back to the workplace. Friends, this is going to change everything. I believe another part of the globalist plan to take over and control the world economy lies in what really happened during the pandemic. Now, an amazing fact about the economic effect of closing down this country's economy for a year is that Americans became wealthier. How could that be? I already told you that the American economy on a whole shrank by 3.5%. I know this sounds crazy, but the fact is, in our last recession in 2008, with the banking crisis and the collapse of the housing bubble, Americans lost over $8 trillion in wealth. But this time, in 2020, in a year of lockdowns, America's wealth increased by $13.5 trillion. That's no joke, friends. The total of America's wealth, most of which, by the way, is held by the nation's wealthiest 1%, increased by $13.5 trillion, while the American people, average Joe, sat at home and watched Netflix, ate microwave popcorn, and the nation's total economy shrank by 3.5%. The government printed the money, and we went out and spent it at whatever businesses the government allowed to stay open at the time. Friends, this was a huge, maybe the hugest ever transfer of wealth to some of the world's biggest global, wealthiest companies in the world. While we, the American people, got a bunch of junk from China for it. Believe me, this is part of the plan. Right now, as everything about the China plague is going away, case numbers going down, the death rate's going down, it's going away. The American people are being told to start wearing masks again, even outside in some places. And they are being told that the worst might be just right around the corner. It's coming back, folks. Listen, we need to be watchmen, but we also need to be prepared. 5 months is not that long of a stretch of time if you have a plan and you put that plan into effect. Have something of value put away that you can trade. People will have things that you need that you'll be able to trade for. Black markets always exist. The tighter regulations get, the bigger the black markets get. And those that take the mark of the beast in the last days, they're going to be a greedy bunch, friends. This is going to be a materialistic time on steroids. You will be able to get whatever you need with whatever you put away. You'll be able to trade whatever you have in exchange for the things that you need. Put a little thought into it. Put away things that you know people are going to want. God will watch over and protect His children. He's promised us that. But we have to do our part. God expects us to do our work. Now, with that being said, I want to stress that I'm not setting dates or I'm telling you that we only have so much time before Christ is returning. Could be next year, could be the year after that, could be a decade from now. Might even be a little longer than that. I don't know. The one thing that we do know is it's going to happen in this generation. The generation that started in 1948. The only question, how long is a generation? Nobody knows the exact time. Jesus told us that. Let's look in Mark 13. We're going to put it on the screen for you. Verse 32, Jesus speaking of that time of the end. And verse 32, Mark 13 reads, "But of that day," the last day, the day of Christ's return, "and that hour," the very moment, "knoweth no man." No, not the angels which are in heaven. Includes Satan and his band of fallen angels. Neither the Son. Jesus doesn't know. But the Father. Father God Almighty is the only one that knows the exact time and moment. For a little context to that, let's go back a couple of verses and see what Jesus is talking about when he says that. Peter, James, John, and Andrew had asked Jesus when the end was coming, when it was going to be, what would be the sign of when it would happen. And Jesus listed many of the things that would be going on just before his return. I'm sure you've read them before. Wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines, and so on. Christ had already told us in verse 20 that the time that Satan was going to be allowed here on earth has been shortened. Let's go there. We'll put it on the screen just so you read it. You know that what we're saying is true. Verse 20 and verse 20 reads, "And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days." And then, in verse 28, Jesus gives us an order. Listen to his own words, beloved. In verse 28, put it on the screen for you, verse 28 reads, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is near." Do you know what summer is, friend? It's a season. And in the parable of the fig tree, we are told when the generation in which Christ is returning is going to begin. We have a teaching on the parable of the fig tree, two-part video. Please go check it out if you haven't watched it. It's important that you understand this. Know the season of his return, beloved. Christ is telling us to know the season of his return. Again, listen to Christ's own words in the very next verse, verse 29. And 29 reads, "So ye, in like manner, when you see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, it's near, even at the doors." Jesus gave us an order. He said, learn it. Learn the parable of the fig tree. And because we know when that generation started, we need to learn the season. He will return. Christ goes on to instruct us to be watchmen. We need to watch for his return. In verse 35 of Mark 13, we'll put it on the screen for you. Verse 35 reads, "Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at evening, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning." So, here's where we are, friends. If you believe the Word of God, you know, and you've studied the parable of the fig tree, and you understand that. You know the generation Christ is returning. It's this generation. We're in it. The generation of the fig tree. We know how long Satan will be allowed here on earth in control of the 4 hidden dynasties. It's going to be 5 months. And what about this season of Christ's return? He says, no, the season. Well, Jesus already told us to know when summer is near. We just read in verse 28 of the 13th chapter of Mark, Jesus told us, know that summer is near. As a watcher, you should also know that the season of the locust just happens to be a 5-month period of time each year that stretches from May through September. And guess what else? It is also a locust army in Revelation chapter 9 that's coming with Satan with the purpose of stealing God's souls when they get here. A locust army, the season. Could it be a coincidence? I don't think so. Folks, until our next episode, please keep the faith, watch for us. We're going to be covering in that episode the 4th hidden dynasty. It's the, and I quote, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, unquote. It's spoken of in the book of Revelation. It's that whore of Babylon. It's the woman that's riding the scarlet-colored beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns in Revelation chapter 17, verse 3. So, until next time, please pray for us. We're always praying for you every day. I promise you that, friends. And help us with the sealing of God's truth in His children's minds. Share our teachings with your friends and your family. Don't miss our next video. And remember, in these end times, the elect will forge the path to the Lord.